You're listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast with Matt Tomasi and can be found at borntokickarse.com/episode 30.
Welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast, where you're introduced to the most fascinating people on the planet. Learn the ingredients of greatness that you can apply to your life. And now your host, Matthew Tomasi.
Today's podcast is brought to you by audible.com. Get a free audiobook of your choice and a 30-day free trial by visiting borntokickarse.com/audible. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. To download your free audiobook today, go to borntokickarse.com/audible. Again, that's borntokickarse.com/audible for your free audiobook. Karel Sabbe is a Belgian dentist who recently ran the fastest known time along the Pacific Crest Trail. The Pacific Crest Trail is a long-distance path running from Mexico to Canada, following a mountain chain running all the way to Alaska. Averaging a little over 80 kilometres per day, Karel completed this epic feat in 52 days, 8 hours and 25 minutes. In this interview, Karel talks about his experiences along the PCT and how tough it really was. Enjoy the interview. Karel Sabbe, welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast.
Thank you. Good morning, Matt.
Thanks again for your time. And congratulations on the fastest known time for the Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah, thanks.
So when did that finish? Was that in July?
It was August, mid-August.
Mid-August, okay. Yeah, I really want to find out more about that. But before we do, you've got, can you tell listeners where you're from and I guess where you grew up and how did you actually get into running and in particular ultramarathons?
So I grew up in a pretty small town in Belgium with about 35,000 people living there. And yeah, I was always motivated by my parents to do sports. So a lot of people went to youth movements or the scouts. But when I came with a suggestion like that, my parents always said, "Oh, you better go in the soccer team or play tennis or go for a sport." Or like when I was saying, yeah, maybe I want to learn how to play an instrument or something, they would always motivate me to go for sports. And so I played soccer for about 15 or 16 years, and then tennis for another 10 years together while I was playing soccer as well. And then, because I didn't have enough time anymore by going to university and studying, I stopped playing soccer and tennis. But I always knew I was good at running. Like whenever I signed up for a race, I would do well, even though I wasn't really trained for it. And then after graduating university, I played soccer for another year, but it wasn't my thing anymore because I lost a lot of time with it, and the trainings were, I always got home again with a lot of energy left. And so then I decided to sign up for the Coast to Coast in New Zealand. Because after graduating university, I took a gap year and spent half a year in New Zealand, camping and doing great hikes. And it was during a hitchhike that somebody told me about the Coast to Coast. He was going there to support somebody. And somehow it stayed in the back of my mind, like, well, that's an awesome race. And then was considering quitting playing soccer. First, I was thinking about doing a triathlon or something, but I wanted something more adventurous. And then I was thinking, how was that again about the coast to coast? And I looked it up, and it looked like the perfect adventure, and I signed up immediately.
So with the coast to coast, were you in New Zealand at this point when you signed up, or were you back still in Belgium?
Yeah, I was in Belgium working. So that was about 6 months or 7 months before the actual coast to coast.
Now, before you did the coast to coast, were you doing any running training just throughout the week, or had you done any marathons or anything like that beforehand?
I didn't. No. I did go running quite often, but not. I wasn't really training or didn't have a schedule or something.
But you were still sort of fairly fit anyway from your soccer and your tennis growing up?
Yeah, fairly fit, I would say, yeah.
Now, with the coast to coast, this is in New Zealand. Is that in the South Island?
Yeah, it's in South Island. It's at the level of Christchurch. So the finish is in Christchurch, and you cross the islands from west to east in one day.
So this is, I think in total, it's, for those who don't know, the coast to coast is a 243k adventure. So, and that includes 140 kilometres of cycling, 36 kilometres of running, and 67 kilometres of kayaking. Now, coming from Belgium, how did you approach the kayak? Did you do sort of much training for that, or?
Yeah, for me that was, of course, the biggest thing to overcome, because I was new to kayaking when I signed up. So that was 6 months before. So I had 6 months to be ready for a grade 2 whitewater 67 kilometer kayaking section. So yeah, most of my time went into kayaking at the time, and I learned how to roll and but I was only training on a canal. That was the only place I could go, and especially when the coast to coast was approaching, the canal froze, or was completely frozen, so I couldn't. Yeah,
that would have stuffed up your training a bit.
Yeah, it did. But so during that preparation, I signed up for some trail runs. I was new to trail running as well, and then I noticed in December, so 3 months before the coast to coast, I was getting pretty fit, but because of all the time I had to spend in kayaking, I couldn't run that much. And then I signed up for a 50k race, and I came out 5th. But then I was like, oh, maybe. Yeah, I'm pretty good at running, or maybe I think then it came into my mind, maybe later I have to explore my running capabilities or possibilities, because with really a lot of ease I could do well or get my distances longer.
Now, are there many trails where you live, or sort of large mountains or anything?
Pretty popular, yeah. Especially in the French part of Belgium, there are a lot of nice trail runs, and some, now more and more ultras as well.
So how did you actually find the coast to coast? How tough was it?
It was, really tough, but I found it just an amazing experience. It was the first time I did something adventurous like that, in a race situation. And then the whole experience with the support team and a lot of people are cheering for you, and the mountain run is just spectacular, and I felt really adventurous and proud to because a lot of people sign up for the 2-day race. You can choose between 1 day and 2 day, but I immediately went for the 1 day, which is a bit of a risk, but I finished well.
How come you chose the 1 day over the 2 day?
Because I wanted a real challenge. I mean, the 2 day is hard as well, but I wanted to go for my first big challenge and just go for it.
And what was the order of the disciplines? Was it cycling first, or?
It's pretty mixed during the coast to coast. So actually, you start with a 3K beach run towards the bikes, and then it's a 55k cycle where you're allowed to draft, and then it's a mountain run, a short cycle section, then the kayaking, and you end with 70k of cycling, non-drafting.
And how long did that take to complete?
It took me 14 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah, so well below the cutoff times. But it did take me a lot of effort.
And how did you go with the kayaking? Like coming from the canals to like, what was that, a grade 2?
Grade 2.
Grade 2 course.
Yeah. So 1 week before, I went down the course with a guided trip. So that helped a lot, of course. And I trained in a really unstable kayak. And then for the race, I took a pretty stable one, not an ocean kayak, but a stable river kayak. And so I felt really comfortable, just because I was used to a very tippy kayak.
In that particular event, the Coast to Coast, do you have to provide your own bike and kayak, or do they provide that?
You have to provide it your own, so that made it a bit expensive because I had to rent everything. And my bike was like the cheapest or standard track model. So a lot of other competitors had a real time trial triathlon bike. I managed to find.
Now, after that was in 2015, the Coast to Coast. After that, you did the Marathon des Sables in 2016.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get into that? Were you sort of like on the waiting list for a long time, or did you get in straight away?
So it's a bit different, yeah. For Belgians, you can just sign up if there are still places. But when I was there, I did hear that Australians or people from the UK really have a waiting list system, and that it might take up to 3 years to participate. But I was in the United States at the time, and I was considering participating, and I just signed up.
So were you, after the Coast to Coast, did you already have the MDS in mind, like in your sights, or did you just sort of stumble across it after the Coast to Coast and register?
So actually, it was pretty short after the Coast to Coast that I actually already started considering the PCT. Yeah, and so the MDS came later, and actually, yeah, I always wanted to do it once, but it felt like that year was the time to do it. Also, yeah, in preparation of the PCT for the desert section. And yeah, so first the idea was to do the PCT, and then later, yeah, came the idea to do the MDS.
The MDS in its own right is one of the most grueling stage races in the world. How did you find it?
It was a great experience. Yeah, for me the biggest struggle was nutrition, because you have to carry your own food for the whole week. And yeah, I'm the type of person that needs heaps of calories, and then I can do great things. But without the calories, I lose a lot of endurance. And then, yeah, of course, you have to cut into your calorie intake, otherwise your backpack gets too heavy. So yeah, I think every day I had maybe 2,800 calories, but yeah, in such conditions you use a lot more. So I started really well in the first stage, and then gradually I started being less good because I needed more. I didn't have enough energy anymore.
How did you cope with the heat?
The heat was all right, because all in all the stages aren't that long, and so every time towards the end of a stage I started getting troubles of the heat, but then I arrived and then I could rest in the shade for the rest of the day. But if I would be slower, I would have had more issues with the heat. You
ended up coming first place, the first Belgian to cross the line. What time did you get?
I think was it 32 hours or something? I don't remember exactly. Yeah. It was an average of a bit over 7K an hour or something.
Now, that's an incredible achievement. And that is pretty much a podcast interview in itself, the MDS. But I just wanted to sort of touch on those two, the Coast to Coast and the MDS. Mm-hmm. Even though you said you had the Pacific Crest Trail in mind before doing the MDS, did you sort of find that by doing the Coast to Coast and the MDS, those two experiences and refining your nutrition, refining your approach to training, and getting your mindset right, did you find those two really helped you in your approach to the Pacific Crest Trail?
Yeah, definitely. And especially, because of the timing, the MDS was a huge help because it forced me to start training with a backpack, and PCT, I needed it as well. It forced me to prepare for a multi-stage, multi-day adventure, and then especially the desert conditions. Without participating in the MDS, I think I would have had some big problems in the desert section of the PCT. So the first 2 weeks are really rough, dry conditions. And as a Belgian, I was really unexperienced. But with MDS, first of all, you read a lot on the internet about the MDS, and all that information you take with you to other desert conditions.
So with the Pacific Crest Trail, whereabouts does that start and finish? G'day guys, Matt here. This podcast is a labour of love, and all episodes are researched, scheduled, edited, created and promoted in my spare time. Typically, after an episode has been recorded, it can take another 3 hours of post-production activities to get the final cut. If I'm providing you with value and you wish to support my vision of sharing these inspirational stories to the world, you can do so at borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. Your support will help to maintain the monthly podcast running costs and enable me to outsource repetitive tasks so I can bring you even more Kick Arse episodes. Once again, if you want to support me in producing this podcast, head over to borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. You can't miss it. And now back to the rest of the show. So with the Pacific Crest Trail, whereabouts does that start and finish?
So it starts in a small or near a small town in California, and the actual start is at the Mexican border, and then it goes all the way to the Canadian border.
So it's pretty much along the west coast of America.
Yeah, it's about 250K land inwards from the west coast. So it's pretty west.
Now, how did this idea come about? When did you first become aware of the Pacific Crest Trail, and when did you sort of think that you wanted to run it?
Yeah, so the PCT was something or a trail I knew for a few years already, because back in I think 2011 or something, I volunteered for a few months in the American Southwest, in the national parks, and then every now and then the trail, people were talking about the trail. So I think back then I knew it, and then I immediately put it on my bucket list, or how do you call it, to hike it one day. So running it only came a lot later, but I knew the trail. I knew I was going to do it at some point, and then because of the adventures I had and getting into the running, and also with my job, practically wasn't possible to hike it. So that would be 40 years later when I could hike it probably. get the necessary 5 or 6 months to do it.
Oh, so it takes about 5 or 6 months, does it, for like an average person to hike it?
Yeah, that's the time it takes.
Did you go from south to north, like from sort of the Mexican border to Canadian?
So that's the most popular hiking direction as well. And for me, I'm really glad I did it that way, because then you end with the green areas, which is more comfortable for me. And you start with the desert, and the hardest part comes first.
Now, how long is it?
In kilometers, it's about 4,250, something like that.
And I read some incredible statistic. It's equivalent to going up and down Everest in terms of elevation, in terms of climbing, up and down Everest 17 times.
Yeah, that's right.
Give or take. Yeah, that would be hell on your quads.
Yeah, and I think the average a day was 3,000 or a bit over 3,000 altimeters. So it was a big part of the challenge to overcome those elevation changes.
With your training leading up to this, how did you train for this? Were you doing a lot of climbing? Was that sort of one of your main approaches to training? Get a lot of climbing in your legs?
Yeah, I tried not to run flat, but of course in Flanders, limited or possibilities are limited. But I usually went to a place called the Flemish Ardennes, which has hills of climbs of maybe 50 meters or something. But on a 70k run, I could do maybe a bit under 2,000 altimeters, so it wasn't too bad. But of course, I couldn't do the long ascents. And then every now and then, I would just put like in the fitness, the runner. I don't know the name in English. Yeah, when you run inside the fitness hall, and then
like a treadmill.
Yeah, treadmill. Yeah, that's it. Treadmill. I put it on a 12-degree slope, and I would run up that for maybe an hour or something. That I did sometimes as well, and I did do a lot of core training. I find it really important, and especially when running with a backpack and doing such long distances. So I did a lot of planking.
Okay, so what did your core training consist of?
So I have a Bosu ball, which I could use for a lot of exercises, and then just exercises on a flat mat, just planking, side planking, doing a lot of hip exercises, especially because I felt that could become an issue for me. So I wanted my hips to be really strong, also the small muscles in them.
Sorry, was that a daily thing with the core?
I would say every 2 days, every other day. I felt really strong doing it, and I felt like it really helped.
Now, what about your diet? Did you sort of change your diet at all leading up to the Pacific Crest Trail? Do you sort of eat? Did you sort of incorporate any particular foods or nutrition either leading up to or during the run?
So yeah, because of the great distance and massive challenge, for me it wasn't. The most important thing was to eat healthy, but I didn't really eat particular things or do a certain diet or something. But in the weeks leading up to it, I started already eating as much as possible because of my training. I was losing weight slowly, but I wanted to be at the start with a bit of reserve still, because if you start at your fittest or leanest shape, I think you get into trouble soon, because you really need those reserves. So I was eating some fatty or a lot of fatty things as well, just keep my weight. And then I started at 73 kg.
Now, when you started this, you had a friend who crewed for you, Joe?
Joe was my crew. Yeah. So it's the absolute limit. One person. So the last record holder did it with 3 or 4 friends. And for Joe, it was usually he's really relaxed, but he said, laughing, now I know what stress is, because for him it was so much that he had to do because he was alone.
Yeah, can I imagine how tough it would have been for him. He would have also gone through sleep deprivation. Does he live near you? Did he do much sort of training as well? Training?
So yeah, he was living in Ghent as well. So a lot of times after a long training, I would go to him because he's a physiotherapist, and so that would already take on my legs and hips, and we would talk about how I felt, and if I felt something new, or if I felt starting injuries or something. So we were definitely working together a lot in the weeks before the PCT.
Can you tell us about how, did you guys fly over together to, was it LA?
Yeah, we flew together to LA, and then we rented a car and drove to start. Yeah, or just had a few days, but we drove there.
So with the planning for this, how much planning did you do?
Yeah, so luckily, before we didn't have to plan that much, or not for the actual trail, I would say, because first of all, it's really well marked, and I just had the GPS file with me on a GPS. But we didn't have to study maps or at least not for the route finding part. Because I remember in New Zealand when I was going to do the Tiararoa trail, and then I had to print maps and study things. But so for that we didn't have to prepare a lot, and then as of ways that Joe would take to get to me, or points that we would meet up, it would change so much every day that we had to just plan it on the go. So there wasn't much planning we could do beforehand.
Now, when you started, can you tell us about that? How were you feeling at the start of this? Because this wasn't like an official thing. This was just like an adventure that you decided to do. How were you feeling at the very start? Because there's a YouTube clip of yourself that is on your website. How were you, nervous or excited, or how were you feeling?
I would say I was most of all nervous. Yeah, really nervous actually. Because so much effort, time, money went into it, and then you're actually at the start, and it's like this is it. And I was worried that I would especially fail like at the beginning, or get something at the beginning, and that it would all not be possible. I was a bit nervous and wouldn't sleep very well. Definitely not the night before, but also while doing the last practical things, I wasn't that or towards Joe, I would say he felt I was really nervous and a bit on the.
So, and also with your fluids, like, are there places to refuel water along the trail, or how do you refuel?
Yeah, I was lucky, or it wouldn't be possible without Joe. So usually the hikers start at beginning of April towards a bit into May, but then it's already pretty late to start hiking. So there are a few springs, but they were already dry because I started end of June. And then you have the trail angels, which are amazing local people who put water caches near some trailheads. But yeah, for me, it was just Joe and me. Joe resupplying me with water, and luckily in the desert section, it was pretty accessible, the trail. So we could meet 3 times a day, I would say. Yeah, I was always carrying more than necessary because often Joe couldn't make it because the road that was showing on the map was private, or the gate was closed or something. And so, yeah, usually my backpack was heavier than I should carry, but we wanted, yeah, if I get dehydrated once, I would lose maybe a whole day instead of just running with a pack that is a bit heavier.
And how much fluids were you taking on average, like in your backpack, for like just in case you and Joe didn't meet up at a certain checkpoint? How much were you sort of carrying?
Back then it was 4.5 liters. That was usually the amount of fluids I was leaving Joe with. So a Camelback of 3 liters and then 2 front bottles of 3/4 of a liter.
And how, like with 4.5 liters of fluids, how long could that last you for? Probably 5 hours, 6 hours?
I would say something like that. Yeah. There were moments that I couldn't make it that long because it was so hot. Then I was able to call Joe that it was I wasn't going to make it with the water, and then he ran in towards me with more water, and then we ran the last part together that day.
How did you communicate with Joe while you're on the trail? And also, I guess, how did you plan? Oh, we'll start off with the communicating part. Did you have like sat phones at all, or is there phone reception where you were?
So in the beginning, there was quite a bit of a cell phone reception. And actually, yeah, stupidly, we started off without satellite phones, but very soon we realized, yeah, this isn't going to work without satellite phones. So we rented them, like 1.5 weeks in, or I mean, it took days for them to get to a place that Joe could pick them up. So after 1.5 weeks, we started having sat phones.
And with sat phones, I've never used one before, but you have pretty much reception anywhere in the world?
Yeah, it was a pain to really get into contact. I think they are really great if you're on the trail and then you're calling into somebody who's towards his cell phone, to somebody that's in a city or something, to tell them you're okay, or get the weather forecast. But from sat phone to sat phone, it took 20 efforts or 15 efforts every time to really get the phone call going, because in the beginning it was fine, but then in the more forested Oregon and Washington sections, in the forest it's really bad, or the reception is really bad.
Now, how did you approach each day? Did you guys plan sort of the night before for the next day, and potentially where, and also how did you sort of factor in the checkpoints for that day?
Yeah, so we usually planned the day or maybe 2 days before. Joe was writing where he could meet me, and then we would say, okay, let's do a 15-mile or a 25K section first, and then so usually it was just first looking if there was a road crossing the PCT, so that would become a checkpoint. And otherwise, if there weren't enough roads, Joe would start looking into trails that were crossing the PCT or going towards the PCT, and then he wrote down all the possibilities. In the beginning, that was pretty good, and then we chose a few checkpoints that Joe had enough time to go around and get in time at the next place. And also, that I had a long enough stretch to make it practical.
Were there any times when Joe had to park the car and then run a considerable distance to meet up with yourself? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. In the beginning, it was fine, but then once we got into the high Sierra mountains, Joe had to do incredible hikes to be able to meet up with me. Like at one point he had to do a 30K hike with over 2,000, elevation change of over 2,000 meters to be able to meet me in the evening. And then you have to know, he was carrying a backpack with 2 sleeping bags, a tent, 2 sleeping pads, food. A lot of times he had to carry water as well because we weren't always able to carry to camp near a stream or a spring. So for him, he got it. Or when we were finished, he was in terrific shape as well, or in great shape.
He would have been. Now, when so you started end of June. You commenced end of June. Was that right?
Yeah.
So that would have been in summertime in the US, roughly.
Yeah, summertime.
Yep. How hot was it? Was there, like at the start portion of the actual trail? Is that sort of through desert?
So not like MDS type of desert, but it's called desert because it doesn't get, or it hardly gets any rain. But you have some bushes and some maybe small trees every now and then, like the really rough dry trees. But then it would get up to, I think, in Celsius 43, 44 often. But there's no way you can start earlier because otherwise the mountains are completely covered in snow still. So if you would start in May, you would hit the mountains too early and then you would struggle with all the snow. And so you really have to get the desert in the hottest conditions. There's no other way.
Now, what about with sleep? Where did you sleep?
90% of the time it was, almost all the time actually. I was in a tent next to the trail.
And you actually carried the tent with you?
So Joe carried it always. Yeah. He would set up camp already when I was arriving at night.
What about food? What sort of food were you eating along the way mainly? Were you sort of eating mainly fruit or gels or sandwiches or just anything?
Sandwiches was the main portion of my diet. So like white bread and white sandwiches with jam and sometimes peanut butter as well. But that was the main part. So I was always eating a lot of sandwiches because they are rich in carbs and still pretty easy to eat.
Did you guys load up your car with heaps of food beforehand, or did Joe just stock up at various shops along the way?
The day before leaving, we stocked up on canned food for the whole trip, or basically for the whole trip, because all the small villages or shops that Joe was passing on the road. First of all, there weren't a lot of them, and they were really expensive, of course, because they were in the middle of nowhere. So the basic foods that wouldn't go bad, we bought all in a big supermarket, and then Joe bought more food on the go.
You actually started this with the intent to try and break the record, was that right?
Yeah.
What was the previous record?
The record was 53 days and a few hours, which meant right about 80 kilometers a day.
So like a double marathon per day, roughly.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
And how did you sort of have an idea of the amount of elevation per day?
I printed out an elevation chart that really showed me the elevation I was going to have to do. So that helped me a lot as well. I was really focusing on that.
As you sort of started off into, the beginning, the first sort of week or so, were you kind of sticking to your plan of roughly 80 to 85 kilometres per day? Were you trying to get that as a minimum, or were there ever times where you slipped under your target mileage per day, or were there other days where you sort of exceeded your target?
So at first, like a few weeks before flying to the United States, we were planning out a bit the first week, and then I was saying, I'm going to really stick to the 80 kilometers a day, to have a good start. But then before leaving, I also contacted the previous, or at the time, the current record holder. And actually, he sent me his daily mileage. And yeah, after seeing afterwards, that was a huge help, because I saw that the desert section, he never, or maybe once, exceeded the 80 kilometers. And that was comforting to know, because I knew, okay, more north, the terrain will be better, or the conditions will be better to get 80 plus days. And so, yeah, I also started without, aiming for 80 kilometers, but I also realized, it's just not possible in those desert conditions, because of the heat. It takes so much energy. We did start at like 4 or 4:30 in the morning, but still, I could push it to 80 kilometers. I tried it one day, and then I got a heat stroke. And I could only run 50 kilometers that day. So it would have been, it was so helpful he's called Joe, the last record holder, send us that mileage, because even on that heat stroke day where I was thinking, okay, this is 30K that I have to add later in the trip just for the day and then we saw that he had a heat stroke as well that day, and he also already only ran 50K. So it was comforting to know, or to have that file. Yeah,
it would have been comforting to know that, like, if one particular day you did 50 Ks, and did you ever get disheartened at all, like by doing sort of days that were lesser, like 50K days, thinking that, you have to make up another 30 Ks at some point in the future? Did that sort of ever get you down?
Yeah, what really helped me through that was just the Joe, his mileage. If we wouldn't have gotten that, then it would have gotten to me like, I'm not able to get those 80 Ks, and I would probably have started pushing it, and who knows what would have happened. So that was mentally the biggest help, just to know, okay, it's okay if I run 75K today. I had the 50K day, but I knew terrain was going to be better later on, and there was no harm done. I was always about at the place that Joe was running at 2 years before that, or a little bit ahead of schedule, so that felt really comfortable.
So who was the previous record holder?
Joe McConaughey is his name. He's a guy from Seattle, an American.
And what was his reaction when you sort of reached out to him and said that you wanted to attempt this trail and you were going to go for the fastest known time? Was he pretty supportive in terms of giving up information and tips and tactics and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was incredibly helpful, really. He was sending all his data and then saying, okay, it's best to start it easy in the desert, because the trail is so long and you have so much still to do. And then he was like, oh, I really hope that you will get the record and go for it. And so that was really nice. And he had it with the record holder before him, that guy was motivating him. And next year, if somebody attempts, I will definitely do the same for somebody else attempting.
So how long was the desert part for? In terms of distance and time, how many kilometers roughly, and how many sort of, was it going for a couple of weeks? How long was it?
I think if I look at my Strava records, it was on day 16, I think, we had the High Sierras. So that's about the end of the desert section. So a big 2 weeks in the desert.
Can you tell us about the High Sierras? Is that like the beginning of a big mountain range?
Yeah, it is. And so for me, that was partly great to be there, because the year before I spent a month in the High Sierras hiking. So I knew I was going to see familiar places and views and like the big alpine passes I had done before. So I wasn't going to be surprised by false calls, or how do you call them? Like when you think you're at the top, but it's still another hour for you. So I didn't have, or that was very helpful. But because of the inaccessibility for Joe then, there we had to do extremely rough days for me, because we had to decide, do I run with a sleeping bag and shelter system and not meet up with Joe, or do I do crazy days and meet up with Joe every night? And so decided to go for the second option.
The crazy days.
Which was the crazy days, yeah. Which was, after all, a good decision, because actually that was the only possibility to gain a lead on the previous record. Because actually, I realized also when starting, it was a super tight record, or super strong. And the previous record holder, I think he was averaging 42 miles. So that would be maybe 70 kilometers in the high Sierras. And I was doing a bit over 80 kilometers a day for a few days. So then I got a 1 day lead, and I never was able to extend that lead. So there I made the difference, I think, for the record.
Now tell us about some of the wildlife, the dangerous wildlife. What sort of wildlife did you encounter or see? Did you sort of see much stuff that was potentially dangerous?
I think the only dangerous animals that I saw, or potentially dangerous animals, were black bears.
You saw some bears?
Yeah. So actually from already a bit before the high Sierras, it's bear country all the way to the Canadian border. But what usually happened is I came with a lot of noise in general, because I was running and with my water bottles and everything, and they would look at me and just run off immediately. So I didn't really have close encounters, but I did see like a bit over a handful of bears.
Were they sort of young bears or like fully grown adults?
I think 2 of them were young, and the other ones were fully grown adults.
Did you have any weapons at all, like bear spray or?
My hiking poles I had, or my running poles.
Yep.
Actually, I did feel a bit more comfortable. Probably it's a bit of a placebo. They wouldn't be really helpful if I got attacked, but somehow it did feel a bit comfortable to have those two if needed. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, have a bit of a distance.
What about mountain lions? Are there many mountain lions, or some sort of like cats or anything like that?
Yeah. So their numbers are definitely growing, but they are more active at night. I knew when I was starting with the trail, if I encounter one of those, it's probably over for me, because they are really, really dangerous.
Are they more dangerous than bears, you'd say?
Yeah, definitely.
Are they? All right.
If you encounter them, and the chances of them attacking you are bigger, and they get to you from behind, really seeing you as a prey. And so they are mountain lions, and they are, you don't want to encounter them. So I didn't see any.
What about snakes? Many snakes?
A lot of snakes. Yeah, a lot of snakes. Definitely in the desert section, but I was surprised actually all the way up to Washington State and near the Canadian border. I saw a lot of snakes. So it was always a bit of a struggle, because I always saw them very late. So do I stop immediately, but then I was like almost on top of the snake, or do I make a quick jump over the snake and carry on? But before that, before starting the PCT, that was one of my worries as well, just to step on a snake and get bitten immediately. But that didn't happen, luckily.
Did you have like a snake bandage at all?
I did have the thing that you put on where they have bitten, and you suck it out. I had to buy it for the MDS. That's a mandatory item, and so I just carried it with me. But apparently they don't really help if it's really happening. But it's a bit more comfortable having at least something.
Did you do much night running at all?
Unfortunately, I did. And for me, that was the hardest, or those were the hardest times. Yeah.
Why was that? Why did you sort of find that night running was harder?
For me, the night running was really hard because always when I was running at night, I knew it was going to be a short night's sleep for me, because usually I wasn't supposed, or of course, sometimes I knew I was going to be running at night, but usually I had to arrive at sunset to get my sleep. And then what was the hardest was expecting to arrive at camp at maybe 10:30 p.m. or something. And then suddenly the trail became really rough or rocky. And then I immediately realized, it's going to be 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. But then, the morning after, you have to wake up at 4:30 or 5 again. Otherwise, you're again not able to do the 80 kilometers. So the night running also, you stumble, you hit your toes all the time. You feel maybe uncomfortable when you see eyes reflecting because of your headlamp, stuff like that. So the nights, mentally, those were definitely the hardest moments for me.
Were there any nights where you got no sleep at all?
Yeah.
Or sort of turned up, arrived at the campsite like very, very late, and you only got like hardly any sleep?
So that happened luckily only once. But so I was going to meet up with Joe. He was going to hike in and meet me. But already on a GPS, that trail looked a bit, it had a different way of marking. So usually it meant it wasn't maintained or something. And I said to Joe when he was going to drive that way at the last checkpoint, like maybe check it out on the internet if it's really possible to do that trail. And then he told me, he didn't tell me, but he looked it up, and apparently the trail was washed out because of a flood. So he wasn't able to take that one. And so the next hike in to the PCT was 30 kilometers more north. But at the first place we were going to meet at night, and I was already late there. So Joe called to me with the satellite phone and told me, okay, I'm going to hike in over there. And I was scrolling on my GPS, like, oh, that's really a hell of a change. We decided Joe was going to keep on hiking until he ran into me, and I was going to keep on running. I was already so tired. It was only 1 week before finishing. What I was doing, I had to do a 1,000-meter climb. Right after that first place that we were supposed to be camping. And so I just ran until I was just stumbling and falling asleep while going on. And then I would just curl up on the trail and sleep until I woke up from the cold, which was usually like 20 or 30 minutes later. And then I would carry on. And then,
So you'd actually do sort of power naps on the trail?
Yeah, I couldn't do it without them because it was a bit of a cliff towards the end, or towards the right, or not really a cliff, but really steep. And I was really like going from left to right, almost falling asleep while going on. So I just had to lie down, and that really helped. And then I think at 6:30 a.m., so after sunrise already, we ran into each other, and then we rolled out our mattresses and put the alarm clock 1.5 hours later because I had to do my kilometers again for the next day. So that was one night that we had to go through the night.
How long did it take for your body to start adjusting to massive mileage every day? I'm thinking maybe a couple days from the start. When you wake up in the morning, you'd be so sore from the day before. Was there a particular point in the run where that no longer became as much of a factor as what it was initially?
Yeah, I think that would be a little before the 2-week mark. Yeah, like at day 12 or something, or 2 weeks, something like that. Then I got to sleep well because at first I cramped up every night and I hardly slept because it was something strange. I had it at the MDS as well. like deep muscles going in a cramp, like deep hip muscles, and I was just turning around in my sleep all the time. And so that was part of the getting used to it, I think.
Was there a particular point on the trail where you really were in your lowest point that you can remember, and you're really sort of doubting whether you could continue, or you're really sort of contemplating or toying with the idea of quitting? Was there a particular moment that you can recall?
I had some really low lows, but before starting, I told myself, okay, giving up will never be an option. And I think if you start something or a challenge like that, and in the back of your mind there is a possibility of considering giving up, I don't think you will make it, because it was extremely painful a lot of times, especially my feet then, and so hard that if somewhere in your mind there's a possibility to give up, I think you will do it. So from the beginning I said, okay, I will never consider giving up. I will always carry on, even though if it's walking or really stumbling, but yeah, I will never consider giving up. So I had some really low moments, but that was just like a burden I had to go through, or it was my fate to have to go through those moments, but I didn't consider giving up.
And is there any particular tips you have that, whereabouts do you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, my tip would be that it's incredible how much strength is in a human body, or in a mental place. Like even if you're really low, I mean, without sleeping, I would be able to somehow get new energy, maybe from a nice sunset or something, and the low would be over, and even though it was, you would think there was no way out, there's always energy left in you, and to carry on through that moment, or to realize it will get better, and you just keep on going. I think that's something good to know.
Were there any, I guess on the other side of the coin, were there any particular points that you remember on the trail that you couldn't believe how lucky you were, experiencing this adventure? And was there any particular moments that you felt fully alive and full? And do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I definitely had a lot of those moments. Like I was really so intensely happy with the place I was, and doing the thing I'm really passionate about. But I think my highest moment of the entire trail would be on one of those hard days in the High Sierra. I had to do I think 92 kilometers with three high passes, like one of them over 4,000 meters high. But I had to do it because Joe wasn't able to hike into the mountains, and I was staying at a trail ranch, which was in the mountains, and you could book a night there. But when I arrived there at 11 p.m., everything was already closed down, and I was going to have dinner there. I wasn't carrying any food or shelter system. There was only one guy still awake there, and he was working there, but he said, yeah, what kind of time is this to arrive? You're too late. Everything is closed down. I'm going to have to ask you to leave this property. But I was really that tired and hungry, and I didn't have a sleeping bag. I was already getting cold again. And he didn't want to wake up his manager. But then in the end, he did wake her up. And she reheated the food that was there for me. And then she told me about a natural hot spring that was inside the trail ranch. And so after eating a lot, I was soaking in the hot spring, and there were a lot of stars. And then I was sitting there, and I don't know if I could be more happier than when I was soaking in the really hot water, looking at the stars, and that was
good.
that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But other than that, because I'm passionate about nature and running, I did have a lot of great moments with sunsets, sunrises, seeing wildlife, meeting other people. Yeah.
Just on the stars, you know, going through the trail, there'd be sort of no real population and no sort of cities nearby. Did you ever notice the stars were super bright?
Yeah,
More so
definitely.
than in the city. How good was that?
That was just incredible, and I really got energy out of it as well, because it's yeah um, it's always great to see the stars, and it definitely, if you can see the whole Milky Way, and or sometimes at night I didn't have to put on my torch when there was a full moon, so that was a great experience as well. Uh, because of there wasn't any light pollution, I could just go like that. But yeah, definitely it would feel like would feel great to see the stars like that.
Now, as you started to approach the Canadian border, you're sort of coming towards the final push, I guess, for this 4,000, 4,002 or 300 kilometre trail, maybe a few hundred kilometres away from the border. Did the terrain start to really change as you're sort of heading closer and closer to the border, the Canadian border?
Yeah, it did, and it became more and more my kind of terrain, like really forested, soft, like real proper trail running terrain. So that definitely helped. As I said in the beginning, if I would do it from north to south, mentally it would have been a struggle to end with the desert. But now, I was really happy running through the forest and having streams and refreshing at the streams, and so that was really a nice way to end.
Were there many other people on the trail that you encountered?
The first 2 weeks I didn't encounter anybody because nobody was silly enough to go in the desert at that time of year. But then as I hit the high Sierras, I started catching up with the thru hikers, and then towards Northern California, I was passing the big bunch of thru hikers, and then until Oregon or Southern Washington, when I basically passed all the thru hikers of the year. So I think there's about 1,500 or 2,000 or 2,000 people starting the trail every year. Yeah.
Do you think, and how did you sort of feel as you, like on the last day, you only had a little bit, if you sort of fast forward to the very last day on the trail, how were you sort of feeling then? What were your emotions, knowing that, you've only got one day left of running and you've run, 4,200 kilometres, for the last sort of 51 days? What were you sort of going through?
Yeah, too much to remember, or there's just so much going through you. And then, also I still had the big sleep deprivation, so that makes you think not clearly, or makes it even more mixed, all the feelings. But I could hardly believe that it actually worked out, and that it was such a great experience. And then especially the relationship with Joe, the experiences that we had. I had some, it was just the adventure of a lifetime, really. And I was extremely happy that I was finishing, because I was still in a lot of pain with my feet, and it was such a struggle, so many days, and then to actually finish, and but there's so much going through you, even sadness that is finishing, and because it's such a routine, and you're so focused on it, that it felt strange to have to leave that behind. All in all, a year and a half of preparing and living towards it. So that was going through my head as well. And
what was it like when you actually finished? You got to the
border.
Yeah, the border. What was that like?
Of course, immediately I started crying, because Joe was there, and my mother, and then another cousin of me. and I was just hugging them and not able to say anything really. Yeah, and then
that would have been good.
yeah, it was good. But the problem was in Canada, the closest road was still like 14 kilometers away. So we had to do that hike right after finishing. And everything started aching. I could barely even hike after finishing, even though I was running the hour before that. My body said, okay, that's enough. I'm done. And even my ankle started swelling. I don't know if it's partly mentally, but just at the end, I started getting maybe some minor injuries. Or
so you completed that in what was the time that you completed the Pacific Crest Trail?
So 52 days, 8 hours and 25 minutes was the official time. That
would have been good.
Yeah,
You killed it on Strava.
I recorded everything on Strava, but the previous guy didn't run with Strava or but like you can do the monthly challenges.
Yeah.
So the July one I definitely won.
The world record. Well, number one in the world was it for July?
Yeah.
So just wanted to ask, with this run that you did, 52 days of non-stop running, what did you learn about yourself? Was there a main lesson or thing that you sort of learnt about yourself that really...
Yeah, definitely. Because on the previous adventures, like even MDS, it was hard, but I never really like hit the wall or something like how people describe it when they do something over their limits. And now I hit the wall every day for so many days, and that taught me a lot. So just hitting those limits of my mental capabilities and physical possibilities. So I was really glad to be able to have that, and that was also one of the ideas before starting to really go way over the what is doable or normal or possible, and then just see where it takes you mentally to be able to do something like that. And it made me a lot stronger, definitely, realizing how much strength there is in me, and how I can endure pain and keep motivated and still see the beauty of the nature. And so that was probably the biggest lesson, that there's so much I could do, and then also how Joe and me grew toward each other towards the end. Like at one day in 30 hours he had to hike 63 kilometers. I was at that night where we had to hike through the night or run through the night, and then when you meet up after a night like that, you just those are things that never get forgotten or lost. So and the way he was selflessly giving everything he had in him to help me get the record, that was just something that's stays with you as well. Because of course I was getting most of the attention, and a lot of people who were following it only a little bit didn't realize at all what Joe was doing and what he was going through as well. So I think those two things were the biggest things for me.
If you could give some advice to someone who is contemplating running the Pacific Crest Trail, maybe not going for the world record, but someone who is planning on running this trail, is there any advice you could give? Are there any sort of tips that sort of really come to mind that you could pass on to someone who's contemplating running the PCT?
So I think the main thing is if somebody contemplates this, it's something they need to be 100% behind or 100% focused on, or 100% wanting to do it, because 90% of the whole thing is mentally to keep on going. And I think if you're not wanting it enough or really want to go for it, I think you will quit. So if somebody wants to do it, they have to have the mindset to go through and then you can enjoy it that way. But you have to know, okay, I'm going for it and I'm going to do it, because otherwise, if you're partly considering, think, okay.
Now, are you planning on anything? Have you got any other things that you're working towards now? Have you got like another ultra in mind that you've sort of got in your sights, or you're actively training for?
So yeah, now the last weeks since Belgium, I took it really easy. I went for a cycling trip, and that's about it. And yeah, for now I will take it easy. I don't have really big adventures coming up, but yeah, I am going to Patagonia in November, and there you have the trail going around those famous. I think it's the Fitzroy or Mount Fitzroy, and there's a trail going around it, which is about 150k. So I think I will run that trail and train a bit for that. But that's not in race conditions. Of course, the ultra running stays my passion, and so now I will do stuff like that for now, and then see what comes up in the future.
Yep, that's excellent. Well, congratulations on the fastest known time for the Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah.
Now, just before you go, you're a dentist, aren't you, for in your day job? What's tougher? I wanted to find out what's tougher, running an ultra marathon or dealing with a patient with really bad breath?
I would say running the ultra marathon would be the hardest. Yeah. In my job, I got used to some bad breath.
What about nitrous oxide? Have you ever had that for pain relief? Does that help at all with coming back from a very long run?
Yeah, we don't have it in our practice, so otherwise I think I would use it every now and then. That would definitely help. Yeah,
cool. Now, whereabouts can people find you online and follow your future adventures?
So to follow, it's mainly the Facebook page called Karel Sabbe Ultra Running, on which I will keep on posting videos and pictures of new adventures and maybe some things I find from the PCT that I still want to share. And then on my website there's a bit more about previous adventures and some photo albums from just general trips as well, which is karelsabbe.com. Then I post some Instagram pictures on at Karel Sabbe as well.
Cool. Well, I'll put those links in the show notes.
Okay.
Thanks again for your time. Really appreciate you coming on, and congratulations again on the fastest known time. That's an incredible adventure and an incredible achievement.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
You've just been listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast at borntokickarse.com. If you liked what you heard and want more, please subscribe on iTunes. Give a 5-star rating and a Kick Arse review. This really helps to boost our presence and continues to allow us to introduce you to the most fascinating people on the planet. Welcome aboard and catch you next time.